Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Toward Peace, where we discuss the intersection of AI technologies and peace. Today, we have three distinguished guests: Dr. Farzin Aghdasi, Dr. Doug Allen, and Dr. Cindi Fukami. Dr. Aghdasi works in industrial AI research in Silicon Valley. He is the senior software manager for deep learning at NVIDIA. In addition to his professional work, Dr. Aghdasi has served as a continental counselor for the Americas and is currently secretary of the Regional Baha'i Council of California. Dr. Allen is an associate professor of management at the University of Denver's Daniels College of Business. He earned his MBA from Harvard Business School and his PhD from the University of Michigan Business School. His research and publication addresses technology in education and management, business issues in China, global talent management, and cross-cultural and diversity topics. Dr. Fukami is professor of management at the University of Denver. She has been a prominent contributor to the literature on management education. She is a fellow of the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching. Welcome each and every one of you, Dr. Allen, Dr. Aghdasi, and Dr. Fukami. It's a great pleasure having each and every one of you here. The first question I have is on the intersection of AI technologies, business ethics, and peace. How are the three related? Before we get there, however, I would like to know what we mean by AI-based technologies. What are they? Please.
Maybe I'll offer a few comments and then my colleagues will help. So the field that is currently being referred to as artificial intelligence has a history of several decades, but its development was an early stage. It was mostly in the lab and experimental. And then 3 years ago, the application of the methods of artificial intelligence to text, to written language, gave birth to ChatGPT. And ChatGPT became one of the fastest adopted apps online because it went from 0 to 1 million users in a very short amount of time, because people felt that the system is now able to receive questions in the English language, formulate a seemingly intelligent answer, and generate the text and the answer in such a way that humans recognize that as being an intelligent answer. So if we stick with the large language models, for that, it popularized the AI. But in fact, AI, long before it became applicable to language, was applicable to signals from cameras, so images, videos, also signals from microphones, therefore music or audio, speech, and so on. And it was able to break the barrier between these different technologies, which previously were separate from one another, and actually being researched also independently. It became one comprehensive set of technologies. Today, to give you one example, you can call an AI model and type the English word, draw me a picture of a scenery with a tree and some river with a horse standing by and so on. And AI is capable of creating a photorealistic picture that humans cannot tell the difference, that this is not a photograph of an actually existing place. And so this other aspect of it is generative AI that can generate sounds, images, text, and so on. When you couple that with analytic AI, which is to try to understand the incoming text and images and sounds and so on, together it provides a conversational method that to humans appear intelligent. I will repeat this because the machine itself is not sentient. The machine itself has no understanding, no wisdom, no comprehension, but it is able to generate answers that to humans appear intelligent. So maybe going forward, we should keep in mind, if we use the word intelligence for that which we ascribe to human activity, then we might find some other name. You can call it artificial intelligence, but it's a funny name because it's not really intelligence. And it's not really artificial in the sense that you don't refer to your laptop as it's an artificial laptop. It's a laptop. It's a manufactured device, you know. But anyway, the point I'm trying to say is that we, as users of the system, may refer to it, but we have to be always aware that it is not a human being you're interacting with. It is an algorithmic set of computer science constructs that are able to process the input in that way. So these artificial intelligence technologies in the last year or two has become prevalent, and people have realized that it has significant impact on nearly every area of work. And that impact sometimes is positive, sometimes is not. I often, when people complain why this machine is not producing, is making errors, the technical word for it is a hallucination, that it's hallucinating. I said, look, the name of it is called generative AI. Generate, it means that it will literally make stuff up. So therefore, it may not always be accurate. That's why it's important for humans to preserve agency and supervise the work of this tool to make sure that it does what we want to do, and be careful that we don't become shaped by technology. Instead, we control the technology. Just to finish, they used to say that if all you have in your hand is a hammer, every problem will begin to look like a nail, because that's what you can do with it, right? So we have to be aware of this, the impact of the technology on human being and human lives. And that's what brings us into peace and business and this ethics. And my colleagues will comment about that.
Which is really the subject of my next question. You reference both the positive aspect as well as the negative aspects of AI. You know, at the turn of the century, the American political theorist Benjamin Barber once wrote, "We have ended up globalizing most of our vices, but almost none of our virtues." So, what is the potential of AI technologies for bringing about a more peaceful world?
That's a very, very tough question. It's kind of speculating about how AI can be used moving forward. But I think there are some glimpses that we might be able to pull even in the early stages. AI is very good at assessing very large databases, large amounts of information, and then pulling out patterns that are there. And so as we're trying to understand global phenomenon, in many cases, the amount of information that's required to kind of pull out those patterns becomes almost unmanageable for human beings. But that would be an example of AI as a tool where we, ask it to go have a look for the patterns, and it can come back and bring us those patterns. But we don't accept those necessarily as an accurate representation. We accept that as input. It might be that we now go out and look to see if we can replicate that observation of that pattern. And so from that standpoint, the interaction becomes an iterative process where we're looking for patterns that might not be discernible by humans naturally. But having given the idea, we can now go out and look for those patterns and then verify whether they are there. But what that can do then is begin to provide global perspective that we might not be able to create as easily, at least, without that kind of image.
Okay, so there is this potential embedded in AI technologies for bringing about a more peaceful world. in a
Well,
sense.
I guess I'm not sure that I would, and others might have a different perspective. I wouldn't put it that it's embedded in the technology.
Sure.
The potential is there for all kinds of things. So in that sense, maybe we could say it's embedded in the technology. But
Sure.
as a matter of fact, I think it would be the intent of the user that is going to guide that technology in one direction or another. I mean, we see AI, using it fairly generally,
Yeah.
as being used in very negative ways.
Sure.
And I don't know that that negative use is embedded in the technology, although the capacity to be used in that way certainly is inherent in the design of that. So depending on how you think about that, for instance, as an example, phishing, the texts and the emails that go out to try to trick people to give information that can be used for malicious purposes in the last 3 years since ChatGPT was introduced is up about 40 times, not 40%, but 40 times. Because this technology is very good at offering the capability for scale.
Yeah.
Now that scale can be used to do a global fishing expedition, if you will, which is an opportunity for great harm.
Yeah.
But that AI technology could also give us the opportunity to reach a large number of people or receive information and perspective from a large number of people. And so that scale is what's embedded, I think, in the technology. The outcome becomes something that is the result of choices that humans are making in terms of how they use that. But at the end of the day, AI is leveraging our capabilities in many ways that allows us to extend our reach, extend the access that people have to these technologies, but also at the same time offers the possibility for problems as well.
Sure.
Yeah. Many, many years ago, I saw a sign at an automobile repair shop, and it said, "What is the most dangerous part of the car?" And the answer was the nut behind the wheel. So I think we have to remember that AI is a tool, but the tool is used by humans. And so the notion of humans is what's really critical. And that's one of the things we wanted to do in our session was emphasize human agency.
Yeah. With agency, the way at least I understand it here, we're talking about the creativity, the wisdom, the outcome of your choices, basically, when we speak about human agency. What I'm hearing in the context of human agency from all of you here is this notion of intention. Somewhere Abdul Baha wrote, if a man's thought is constantly placed on heavenly subjects, then does he become saintly? Have we began to governmentalize this thing that is called AI technologies so it can potentially be at the service of some goods, not the other way around?
So I can say that peaceful-minded people can use tools of artificial intelligence in order to promote peace. And warlike people can use artificial intelligence to accelerate their warlike behavior. Fraudster can use it to commit more fraud. So in a way, exactly as Doug was saying, is a scalar. It multiplies human capability. So if it multiplies human capability, the first thing that we need is a transformation of the heart and mind of the people who are going to be using this tool. And maybe in the past, they had less capability. Now they have more capability. In some ways, there is an analogy somebody was saying between the invention of nuclear power and AI. What nuclear power does is that before that, we could not produce as much, either in weapons or in energy. If it is properly regulated, either by governments or by societies, then it can be used for good or it can be used for harm. So in the same way, AI multiplies people's capabilities, and therefore when we talk about agency and about peacefulness, the first thing that we need is that transformation.
Yeah.
So you know that the Baha'i writings, for example, talk about that there are three protagonists of change: individual, the community, and the institutions within that community. So each one of these three agencies need to have increased capacity. And when a dangerous weapon becomes available, whether it is AI or it is a nuclear, then you have it calls for greater cooperation, greater understanding, so that we can all collectively make sure that this is not in the wrong hands,
Sure.
that it is used properly, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't supplement, it doesn't supplant, I should say, ethics or ethical considerations.
Sure.
We have to be careful that it should remain a means, not an end. It should not dictate our intentions and our shape and our goals and so on, but instead be used in a proper way, and societies can define what is proper in order to achieve the same goals that we had prior to the existence of AI. And now this additional tool might improve that. I'll give you examples of other large-scale technologies that have changed human life and human society.
Please.
Steam power, right? Electricity, more recently, internet. So life existed before these, and it exists after those technologies, but the challenges actually do not change. The ethical challenges, the right and wrongs, do not change.
Yeah.
It's just that those tools will enable the good to do more of the good and the harmful to do more of the harm.
Yeah, I'm thinking about William Sears. In a Baha'i World Congress in London in 1963, he told the audience, we live in the era of nuclear giants, but ethical midgets. What do we do with AI in that kind of a world order?
Well, we were actually discussing that question that came up in our session earlier today. You know, how is it possible that ethics can be built into AI? And right now, I think the skepticism is in part because of the asymmetrical focus that the market has really encouraged companies and the developers of AI to focus on what will be profitable, what will be fast, what will be scalable, you know, and those are all questions that are particularly interesting when you're trying to maximize your profit. And what that has done is it has diverted, if you could say, many resources into the kind of raw development of the capability of the technology, rather than doing a symmetrical amount of research that would actually be focused on the ethical considerations. What the Baha'i Internet Agency has recommended, you know, the importance of looking at second and third order consequences, unanticipated consequences coming out of that. I don't enter into the discussion with the assumption that the AI companies are evil companies. I mean, to me, that's an open question, not a closed question. But I do believe that they, in many ways, are ignoring an ethical responsibility to ensure the reliability and safety in the performance of their products. And so far, society is not holding them accountable for that, because society is excited to get all these bright, shiny tools that will be there. And so part of the solution, I think, is a rebalancing of the focus in that area, so that there is an equal priority given to the safety and reliability, the ethical use of these technologies. And it's not just in terms of performance. That's one area that we're still a long way away from. The hallucination, the bias that is being built into these technologies, not intentionally necessarily, but out of a lack of understanding of how these large language models are working. To give an example, Farzin said that, the training comes from, the vast, information base that is out there in the internet. There's speculation, I don't know if you would agree, but speculation that within the next 5 years, these language models will run out of data to process. And then the question is, how do you continue to build their capacity? And the concept of synthetic information, that literally the AI models will create information that becomes the basis for training. Those are really important questions to ask in terms of, does that make sense or not? But the focus of the training currently on historical data means that we're actually embedding into the AI decision-making process or generative process the biases of past ages. And I'll just give you a really simple example of that is not AI-based, but it makes the point that I was doing a communication study for a construction management company and going around and interviewing employees in different offices around the country. And in addition to the interesting communication issues that were coming up, there was constantly a bug that everybody had in their ear that they just wanted to raise up, and they talked about the inequitable pay for women in this construction management consulting organization. That was not part of the study, but it came up in almost every office I visited. So when I presented my report, I said, we gave the assigned communication study, but I said, I have to convey to you this one issue that just came up all over the place. And the CEO said, we don't have a pay problem here. We're very committed to equal pay. I said, okay, well, this is just what I would, to his credit, he took that information and conducted a study and found there was a huge inequality in the pay. And so they conducted, and he was very surprised because he was so committed to equality, so committed to recognizing individual performance. What they found was that it was being generated by the practice of asking, as part of the salary negotiation, what's your current salary at the company that you're coming from? And so out of that, they said, okay, then we'll give you 10% or whatever it is. And so any bias or discrimination that was taking place out in the broader community was being embedded in their own practices by pulling that historical data in as part of what's going on. And I think for me, that's a way for me to think about the potential for AI to be doing this unintentionally. We say, we'll use all the data, that we have throughout here. But if we've had a societal history of discrimination that has taken place over time, that becomes embedded in the training of that model that then is used for actual decision-making in different ways. We see that manifested in the justice system. Some AA models have been used to assign sentencing strategies and that sort of thing. And oftentimes that's based on predicted recidivism and other kinds of things like that, which then is influenced by historical data that may be very biased by previous sentencing decisions that have taken place. So we have to be aware of all of that. But if we are, then we can use this data very effectively as we triangulate and check and be sure that what we have is correct.
Very good. Very good. At this juncture, I wanted to ask you, perhaps Dr. Fukami can speak to this point. Can we offer a Baha'i reading of AI technologies? In other words, where does the Baha'i faith and the cause intervene on this debate?
All right.
I'm not a member.
That's okay. We'll come back to
you. Sure. So, you see, the Baha'i community has a certain set of spiritual principles that are global, that belong to all of humanity, that actually is not exclusive to the Baha'i faith. For example, the concept of the oneness of mankind, or the desirability of justice and fairness for all of humanity. These principles are universal principles that that humanity needs to be always aware of. But then, because the Baha'i community itself assumes a humble posture of learning on all matters, as new technologies come, new methodologies come, new practices will come, and so forth, it is able to bring a conversation, a discourse, so that communities can explore based on these universal principles the application of any particular new thing. And so if, for example, AI becomes a question in a community, the community should first think about, because we encourage people to generate knowledge, to apply knowledge. We don't divide people into producers of AI and consumers of AI. Rather, we say all humanity can collectively contribute to the making of new things and also to finding their appropriate use. So the kind of practices that the Baha'i community does in its own, for example, for children classes, for guidance for the junior youth, for study circles, for devotional gatherings, and so on, everywhere we emphasize empowerment of the individual, the community, and the institutions that arise from those communities to explore things, to contribute, to see themselves not as victims, not as backward, not as trying to look up to another country. This whole idea of developed and developing, we don't subscribe to that. We say all humanity is one. In the so-called developed countries, there are great many problems of inequality, for example, and in the other countries there are great advantages in traditional knowledge and so that can be valued and so forth. So applying these principles, it enables not only the Baha'i community but also with the wider society. In fact, we have many examples, including in villages in India or towns in Africa and so on, where the entirety of the population, let's say of a small town or of a village, recognize that beyond the religious question, the Baha'is have a practice of consultation. And so they want to reach out to Baha'i institutions and they say, well, we have a dispute, these two farmers, about the water and who gets how much of it and so on. We know that you don't have an agenda, that you don't have political partisan formations, but the Baha'i said, look, we have no power. So we understand that. You have the power of truth. And so call in the other farmer and ask questions, and by that. And so we have examples of these things where just the construct of the existence of the Baha'i administration is something that is not unique or excluded to the Baha'i community.
Very good. Very good.
Yes. You should ask questions, but even more important, we should listen to the answers.
That's right.
Because it isn't just the asking of questions. It's the dialogue, it's the discourse, as you said earlier, that is just so critical, that we want to understand what matters to those who don't share our beliefs. And why do we want to do that? Do we want to do that so that we can use this information against these people? Or do we want to use this information so we can create greater understanding and maybe even to the level of peace? That peace will come when we realize that we have more in common than we have let ourselves believe.
Yeah. And we see that in practice, this is, at least at the moment, not the case. Not the case. And which begs the next question that I wanted to ask you, Dr. Fukami. What is here relationship, if you were to unpack this a little bit further, AI technologies, ethics, and peace. Can you speak about that intersection?
There's well, first of all, there are ethical issues in everything. And those certainly haven't been resolved. So AI is no different than any other issue we have. In terms of peace, there has been at least one study published that shows that AI, it was a study in England, and they were looking at community groups that were meeting to deliberate difficult questions in their community. And they had human mediators and they had AI mediators. And they discovered that the AI mediators did a better job of creating agreement in these communities than the human mediators did, which kind of goes against everything we think about in terms of bias and whatever, that a human would be better at this than AI. And so I think it depends a great deal on how the AI is trained and the information that is fed to it. And I think the issue of ethics is the same way. I mean, ethics is a series of principles that we follow in order to be more just. And if we can embed those principles in AI, it may turn out that we have an even stronger tool for ethical behavior in our society than we have today. We certainly don't have great examples of ethical behavior.
I think part of the problem has to do with the fact that we have ended up politicizing our ethics.
Oh, absolutely.
And part of the challenge here has to be depoliticizing it. And so for me, AI has a great potential in doing this. Some kind of an objective empirical knowledge is needed. What do you think, Dr. Allen?
Well, I think that concept of objective empirical knowledge is a very important one, because in some ways that is a reflection of our understanding of reality. And even an objective understanding of empirical knowledge is still a subjective interpretation of whatever that...
I mean, a feminist would always tell you that objective knowledge is, at the end of the day, quite subjective.
Yeah, I mean, again, in general, many of the Baha'i teachings invite us to reject false dichotomies. And so to talk about objective and subjective there's really a continuum, and there's no such thing as purely objective or purely subjective, but that's where the process of consultation helps us explore that middle ground.
Which begs the question: can we ever be value neutral in our assessment of?
Well, but I wouldn't say that I want to be. I wouldn't say that I want to be value neutral. I want to work and collaborate with others to come up with a shared value system that can serve us, because value neutral at some point becomes amoral, I think, rather than, what does value neutral mean? That sort of means we don't have any values. And so
it brings in the notion of cultural relativism here.
Exactly.
And having to do with postmodernity, that culture is relative.
So where I would start, as I think about this in relation to AI, is my observation is that many people are looking to AI as a more objective source of truth than humans, who are claimed to be naturally subjective. And so an example of that would be turning over the selection of people in an organization, as we're hiring people, to AI. We say, the humans are biased, and so let's let the AI do this for us. Well, what we learn is that the AI carries with it a lot of biases as well. And in fact, if we don't understand the algorithms, we don't even know what those biases are that came to that. And so Google, as an example, adopted AI with the hope that a very data-driven decision-making system, very objective, could be created. What they discovered was it didn't work. They said, what we need is a data-informed decision where the AI helps us understand the parameters and the reality behind the data, and then skilled humans make the decisions. And so that becomes the assistant rather than the decision maker. Because in my mind, when we say, okay, I'm a biased human, so I'm going to let the AI do it. I think that's almost like a lazy excuse. What I would prefer that I do, if I'm really an agent with a human with agency, is I take ownership of the subjectivity that I have, and even the defective biases that I have, and I work on those.
Sure.
To the point that I can make fair and honest decisions, recognizing that they'll never be bias-free. But I don't want to offload that to the AI. I want the AI to help me understand maybe some patterns, maybe some ideas, but I want to use that and then improve my ability to objectively look at that. And again, that's not going to be perfect, but I think that we can probably have more confidence in humans that are working in a continuous improvement mode to identify a prejudice, get rid of it. My dad used to say, I cannot guarantee that I do not have any prejudices. But as a Baha'i, I know that I should not have prejudices.
Yeah.
So whenever anyone points out a prejudice that I have, I'll work on it.
Yeah, yeah.
You see, and so that spirit of continuous improvement, I think, is much more powerful than saying we just accept us as biased, imperfect humans. So let's go for the perfect technology to do it for us.
Dr. Fukami, Dr. Allen spoke about deconstructing false dichotomies here when we contemplate ethics between, in this case, subjective versus objective knowledge. Then at this point, so far as constructing our ethics for AI technologies are concerned, who speaks?
Who speaks to...
It's creation, creating the ethics.
Creating ethics around it.
Yeah.
I think that comes out of a process. And the process would be who's sitting at the table having these discussions about what we should and shouldn't do. I mean, part of the Google experience was that the decisions were being made by white males, and it was so surprising that they were favoring white males in the hiring decisions. So what does that tell you? It tells you that the wrong people were at the table, or not enough of the right people were at the table. And so long as we have systems that are not meritocracies, we will continue to put these decisions in the hands of people who have a very different view.
Yeah.
The people at the top of the organization are very different than the people at the bottom of the organization. And Doug and I used to talk in our classes about having a diagonal slice of an organization involved in making a decision, that people from across functions and people from across levels. So it's very much like saying we need democracy. We need systems that provide voice to people who would like to have it, and maybe even people who wouldn't like to have it. And so we can hear what others are expressing. I don't think ethics means that we have a set of commandments. I think ethics means that we use good processes for figuring out whether what we're doing is right or wrong.
Yeah. We're at a critical juncture in history in the sense that we're contemplating whether we can globalize our ethics or to think about ethics in universal terms. And it's become a thorny issue as to how to think. Should we localize our ethics, or can we ever globalize them?
Boy,
I mean, it's a loaded question, and I don't want to get there. I'm just posing it out there for the viewers so they can understand the complexity of this debate that we're having.
There is, by the way, one value that scholars have identified that is shared in every culture on Earth, and that is what's typically called the golden rule.
Yeah.
Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, or reciprocity, that you give to others and they will return that and give back to you. And that is something that we all share.
Sure.
And peace comes from sharing.
Yeah. I remember I encountered the issue in 2015 I published a paper in the Journal of Human Trafficking called Global Human Trafficking Unmasked, a Feminist Rights-Based Approach. That's what I called it. I got to a point that I had to speak about managing this globally. And cultural relativism dominates the literature. So I had to intervene and at least coin the term minimal universalism. Can we speak at least about some minimal things, like the right not to be exploited sexually?
Right.
That we can agree on at the very least. I just called it minimal universalism. I didn't know what else to call it.
Because I think this is a really critical part of the discussion, and it applies whether we're talking about AI or whether we're talking about farming and any human trafficking, anything in between. And that is the debate about kind of global values versus local values. And I think that the Baha'i writings point us in a direction that would say yes, local and global. And so we have an overarching set of principles that we must agree on, the minimal universalistic, the terminology that you used. And that becomes sort of a common language that we all have throughout the world. But how that might be reflected in a local society could be quite different. And it might be different for very different reasons. Take the example in AI right now, there's a great debate about the impact that AI will have on jobs. And so, if AI is so much more effective at making us efficient, then all of a sudden we might need fewer people to do that. And so, of course, no one is very excited. Most people, at least, are not excited about eliminating all jobs and leaving the vast majority of people jobless. In the Baha'i writings, we talk about the work done in the spirit of service as worship as a primary value, and kind of understanding that the process of work has value in and of itself. In the management literature that Cindi and I are in, the meaningfulness of work is one of the key concepts that is there. And yet, with that same technology, might have very different attractions in different communities. If we go to Korea, where there is a very strong threat of reduction of population, labor-saving technologies might actually be very, very attractive. If we go to a village in Africa where there is a strong younger population of working age, labor-saving technologies may not be attractive at all. And so if we start out with sort of an overall appreciation of the value of work and the importance of that as a human activity that is contributing to the continuous advancement of civilization, we still may find that these technologies will have different benefits and different impacts in different areas. And so one of the things that I like to suggest to my students when I'm helping them think about international business and cross-cultural kinds of things is that we want to think ahead as we travel around. What are our values? And so the relativistic approach gives us an excuse. We go to some country and we say, well, bribery is rife here, and so we will go along with the local culture. Who am I to impose on that? Other people would say, though, that by having compromised your universal value that you brought of doing that, you're actually contributing to the problem in that country. Because if you go to that country and interview people, they will not say, we love this bribery. This is a beautiful feature of our culture. It's actually, they'll say, this is a problem that's inhibiting us. I've lived in places that have had problems with corruption. I don't find people admiring that. That's not a cultural trait. So we want to go with, I think, on one hand, a very clear idea of what our principles are that are not what I would refer to as non-negotiables. And then when we arrive in the culture, we want to respect and kind of understand what that local cultural value framework is, and then find how we work within that so that I don't have to compromise my values, and I don't insist that other people do too. And the way that I like to frame that is a grid where we talk about, importance to me and importance to you, to put it in a dichotomous sort of thing. And we can then prioritize our conversations that we might have, because in one quadrant, it is low, not important to me, not important to you, even though the cultural practice is different. If it's not important to either one of us, who cares? Why should we even be debating about what size the business card is or something like that? So that's easy to resolve, and you probably go the local way, wherever local is. If you move over into the side that is important to you and not so important to me, even though it's very, very different, it's easy to go with your way because it's not so important to me. And likewise, the reverse, if it's important to me and not so important. The real creative area is when I bring a cultural value along with me that is important to me, and it bumps up against a cultural value of yours that is important to you, that is different. And that's where we need to have the people around the table to really consult about how we can find a creative solution that actually does not compromise your culture or my culture, but appreciates the value of both of those perspectives and finds a solution that works for us. And I think, that's where we need to kind of get willing to get creative, but creative without compromising basic values that we have. And so that becomes fun. So to think ahead about what are the non-negotiables. They may be small or they might be large. As a Baha'i, I don't drink alcohol. So that's a non-negotiable for me, even if I go to China, where it's very fashionable to have toasting and all kinds of stuff. But I find that if I actually think ahead about that and share that value with the people around the table and say, I'm a Baha'i and I don't drink, they'll say, oh, it's your religion, we'll respect that. And so they'll pour vinegar for me or some goofy thing, to do that. But then if I say, oh, I don't feel like drinking, we'll have a harassment all night or trying to do that. So to kind of bring those values out without apology. But then every time I do that, I better be ready to respect another value that's over on the other side, so that we have this mutual respect for each other.
I mean, the closer I look at this debate, the closer I find that the Baha'i faith contributes so neatly to this debate by laying out the principle or value of the oneness of humankind. This thing that Shoghi Effendi, guardian of the Baha'i faith, referenced as the pivot round, which all the teachings of Baha'u'llah revolve, and rightly so. And that the fact that humanity is one, perhaps it's based on this analytical point of departure that a new system of ethics can be created. And it all goes back to Dr. Aghdasi's point here, that for this to take shape, thought and mind must undergo transformation. The reality of man is his thought, Abdul Baha wrote, not his material body. Any other inputs?
No, I just wanted briefly to say this. There's a popular notion that technology is just a tool. I pick it up, use it, and then I put it down. In reality, this is not the case. All technology carries with it the value system of the organizations that created it. And therefore, we have to be aware of that. Also, this question of relativism and objectivism, we need to go beyond that. We don't subscribe to the postmodern views. But the question is this, that through consultation and through a humble posture of learning and through regular action and reflection, we are able to gradually converge on an idea that is not only peaceful, but builds a harmony, builds unity among pockets of individuals. And these pockets become the haven that attracts other people of goodwill who are tired of violence and sectarianism and divisions and so on. And so slowly these pockets will grow until humanity can reach this eventual universal peace.
Dr. Aghdasi, for some time we began to contemplate that perhaps this age of reason has its own limitation when we spoke about enlightenment. Now we're beginning to question postmodernity, as you also suggested. Speaks to something of a moral uncertainty here.
Asking questions is good.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks to each and every one of you. Such an enlightening discussion. And we are privileged to have you on the channel. Thank you very much. And have a great day.
Thank you for inviting us.